Back on the Rob Dibble Show with Ben Darnell on your afternoon drive. Joining us now on the Bobby V's hotline, Tim Brando from Fox Sports and his good friend and colleague for many, many years. Greg Gumbel just passed away. We wanted to get him on, not just to talk sports, but give us a little more information on Greg Gumbel, the man. And Tim, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, Dibs. Thanks for having me on, and Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a great Christmas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously a lot going on in the sports world today. But, yeah, I mean, that was very, very difficult news for all of us that have known Greg and have known him for as long as I have. And we go back, Greg and I do, all the way to my start at ESPN. I think I've mentioned to you a few times that January 5th of 1985 was my first ever national broadcast on ESPN with Dickie V. And that day that I was doing that game, Greg was in the studio. And then fast forward to the ACC tournament that year in Atlanta, and we had an IFB system that was just beginning to be used. To go back to that period of time, in the beginning, if there was a studio throw to you, the producer had to tell you, go, because we couldn't hear the guy on the other end. But in that year, about that time, we had a mix-minus system that would allow for a live throw from a studio to the remote location, so the play-by-play guy would take it. So they were testing the IFB system, and it was Greg that was in the studio that day, and he's checking his microphone to make sure I could hear him on the throw, and he said, Tim, this is Greg. Are you there? And I'm like, oh, hey, Greg, it's great to hear your voice. And he said, hey, I hear you're a Louisiana boy. So am I. I was born in New Orleans. And it just immediately just made me feel so comfortable and at home, as if I had known him, my whole life. That was his introduction to me and my first opportunity to say hello to the man. And that's just the kind of guy he always was. He made everyone feel special. He made everyone feel as though they were more important than just about anybody at that particular time when he was saying hi to them. He carried that really throughout his career. So at the end of 1986, when John Saunders and I were each hired, and that was in December of 86, when we were coming into Bristol, we were both looking forward to meeting Greg. And then we found out that it was Greg that left, and it was the 7 o'clock Sports Center that he used to do that we were going to be paired up on. So Greg had left to go to Madison Square Garden Network, but he left such an indelible impact. This is one of those stories from kind of inside baseball, okay? But again, it tells you how much he cared about ESPN and the people he was leaving behind. You guys remember, this, Dibs, because you were a baseball player. Remember the controversy that was stirred up when management stopped allowing Chris Berman to use the nicknames for baseball players?
Absolutely.
Bert, B. Home, Bly-Levin,
yep.
All those Jim Two silhouettes on the shave. The guys that were a part of that, that were leading SportsCenter, I never met them because they were fired shortly after Greg left. And the reason that happened, at least in some measure, I'm not sure. I mean, I wasn't there, but I do know this. Everyone was telling me this when I got there. The guy that took over at that time, that was sort of the managing editor for SportsCenter, and this was pre-John Walsh. He came probably a year and a half later, but a gentleman by the name of Kurt Varner was running our newsroom at that time. And he said, Tim, listen, you're going to be working the 7 o'clock show, which Greg used to do, and John Saunders is going to be working with you, and you guys will be together. And I'm like, well, that's great. We were on the same press release, so I was excited for that. And he said, listen, I'm new to this. I just got the job. And he said, and I'm really excited about it. We're going to have some fun. This is going to be a fun time at ESPN. And he was so right. And one of the reasons was the pressure and the sort of mentality of don't do this and don't do that, which had been the problem in that newsroom for a while because these guys were just sort of the no-fun league, telling Chris that he couldn't do this and couldn't do that. When Greg left, he wrote a letter to the higher-ups and just thanking them for the 5 years that he had spent there, but also indicating to them that morale could become an issue if they didn't take a strong look at some of the things that were going on. Now, some might say that's a bit extreme for anyone walking out the door to do, but I'm here to tell you, everyone in that newsroom that was made aware of it or that found out about it was so appreciative because he was looking out for them long after he left. He wanted that place to flourish. He wanted the people there that he left behind to enjoy what they were doing because he knew at the time they weren't. Now think about that for a second, okay?
Wow.
That just tells you a lot about the man and how much he cared about other people. That's not a widely known story, but it is a pretty well-known story amongst those people that were there 40-plus years ago, and particularly in that newsroom. And so I remembered that, and he came back to town a couple of different times to get some of his furniture to move it to New York. And when he did come to town, I was invited to his home once for a get-together, and he could not have been more genuine, couldn't have been nicer. And then as the business goes, so to speak, right, we're of the same generation. He's 10 years older than me, and he worked there from 81 to 86. I went there from 86 to 94. So fast forward, he had been at CBS to do the NFL Today with Terry Bradshaw, sort of the second iteration of the NFL Today when Brent Musburger was fired in 1990. But then when CBS lost the contract to Fox, when Fox was born in 94, he went to NBC, where he was doing much the same for NFL Live, and was on the podium for their last Super Bowl with John Elway and the owner of the Denver Broncos. The "this one's for John" moment. Well, I had gone to CBS in 96, was calling games there, but then when we got the NFL, it was from NBC. We got the AFC package from NBC in 98, and that meant the NFL Today was coming back. They hired Greg back at CBS, but to do play-by-play, not to be in the studio. Jim Nantz was hosting the NFL Today, and I was moved into Nantz's position as the host of College Football Today, which was on. We were in the same set, sitting in the same chair, just on different days. Greg went on and called the first Super Bowl ever by an African-American broadcaster. So I had a sterling run there with Phil Simms, a couple of Super Bowls, and the first one to ever do it, the one between the Giants and the Ravens in 2000. And then he came back and switched places with Jim and was in the studio for the remainder of my time between, say, I think it was maybe 2003 or 4 when Jim went to the booth and he went back to the studio to work on the NFL Today. And so I'm seeing him every week. I'm really getting to know him even better because at that point JB was working at Fox and Greg was hosting the NFL Today. So we're seeing each other all the time and cracking jokes, and he's telling me the Rolling Stones are better than the Eagles, and I'm like, no, you ignorant slut. The Eagles have 4 front men. He loved to talk about anything other than sports, and I did too. So we hit it off that way.
Awesome.
Many times over, and he made everyone else around him better. The studio was always a joyful studio. He was a very private man. Now, we don't share that commonality. As you know, I'm a pretty public person. But he had a great sense of humor, and he had a willingness, whenever he went into that studio, to make it a joyful place. And we did share that. I always wanted to have fun when we were on the air. And anybody around us, I think, felt similarly. So the love and affection that people have for him and the outpouring of this he'd be really disgusted with all of us. He would be saying, "Will you guys just shut up? You're making all this fuss." I mean, he would be saying that to us now. But Brando, would you just shut up? They're right. You talk way too much. You talk even more off the air than you do on, and that's a hell of a lot. He'd be telling me that now. But he was a gem, and as great of a broadcaster as he was a pretty shy fellow. It took, and I know Bryant pretty well too, and it was his younger brother Bryant who had already become a rock star in sports and had moved to news and was doing the Today Show during those days at NBC, But he told me, he wasn't sure that he could do this. He was in sales. He had a personality, but it was Bryant that told him. It was Bryant, his younger brother, that said, "You really ought to go to WNIQ's got an opportunity for you in Chicago there, and you should take it. You should go." So he really wasn't sure that he would be that good on TV, and that part of him reminds me a little bit of Saunders, who was my best friend at ESPN and remained my best friend until the day he died. John was a guy that had enormous talent but was very quiet and had a level of humility about him that almost made him appear standoffish. He was anything but. John was a sweetheart. But Greg was similar in the sense that he didn't know how talented he really was. He never really fully understood, the five-tool talent that he was, because he could call a phone book or he could go into a studio. And that's really what, in those days, guys like Sean McManus, who was running CBS, he wanted to have guys that were versatile, guys that could be both play-by-play people and studio people. There aren't many of those guys out there, fellas. There's not. I mean, as great as some of the all-time broadcasters were, Keith Jackson, Dick Enberg, Pat Summerall, you think of all the big voices through the years, Don Criqui, so many. Not many of those guys could do both. But Greg could. And that's the definition in my mind of a five-tool talent. No matter what you put him on, it could be an Olympic event, it could be hosting the Olympics, it could be, it could be the luge at the Winter Games in Lillehammer, and he would just make it sound so effortless and so outstanding simultaneously. And we lost a great one, but as great as he was in that area, he was a finer human being.
You always take questions out of my mouth before I finally get to them. I mean, I was going to ask, I'm just reading the list of stuff that Greg has done over his career, and knowing his start too. He wasn't started in this business. He didn't go to Northwestern or Syracuse.
No.
He wasn't anointed in this business like a lot of people get. And then he goes and does everything. Yeah. And I know you do it as well. A lot of you guys, a lot of you legends do all different kinds of sports. And this might be a question for you as much as it is for everyone. How is it so effortless to go from figure skating to a Howard Stern show to doing a studio TV hosting of Super Bowl? I'm sure there's a lot of prep. I'm sure there's a lot of natural personality talent. But something about that guy in particular that made it seem like he never really changed his style for the sport, but still made it feel like he is known and been a part of that sport his whole life.
Well, that's the art form of what we do, is to make it look easy. As it happens, a lot of people think it's easy. Just go to Twitter. They think anybody can do it, right? So, just go check out X and see the posts that are out there. Hell, I could do that. And that's fine if you want to think that. But in truth, there are so many moving parts, so many people talking to you simultaneously, whether you're calling a game or you're in the studio. Studio is so different in the sense that you're up against the clock a lot more than you would be while calling a game. The game controls the clock when you're broadcasting a football game or a basketball game, not the studio. The studio is up against it always, tight with time. So you have to learn to speak in sentence fragments, and you have to learn how to get the most out of the ensemble of talent that's with you, which means be quick and to the point. So you have to augment or change your approach when that happens. But he always did it with a friendly sound, a friendly face and a friendly sound. And I think that's why people loved him so much, both those that were viewing him and those that were working with him. That's how you do it. And I think the best lesson learned for any young broadcaster coming up that wants to be good at it is to understand that listening is the key. As much credit as I get for talking, I had better be listening too. I had better know what my guys are saying so I can react appropriately to that. A modern day feature of, and I'm sure he'd be the first to say it because he later became the Michael Jordan really of ESPN in so many ways, is Mike Tirico. Mike did come out of Syracuse and did plan on doing it, but Mike, grew up watching guys like us and then replaced us. And took it to greater heights. And he is a byproduct of what ESPN could do to help train you to become one of the very best, and that is throw them to the wolves and see if they survive. In those days, it was like they were dreaming up ways to see you fail. Okay, Brando, have you ever done hockey? Well, I was born and raised in Shreveport, Louisiana. Hell yeah, I can do hockey. Sure. And so survive this, you right. Dumbass you. Let's see if you can survive this. Yep. And so when you survive it, then you feel like, okay, well, I'm never going to get, I'm never going to get the job from the good doctor or from any of the other great hockey announcers, but at least I survived it. I didn't embarrass myself. Right. I think that when you're in our business, you want to take on everything. You want to say yes to every opportunity. And then after you have completed as they say, being thrown on the wall and surviving and sticking, then you want to get to a point where you understand what your limitations are and say no to a few things and protect your career. But Greg did do all those different things and was willing to do them, and always came away, I think, better for it. I think every broadcaster that really can do just about anything that's thrown their way, no matter the sport, no matter the tempo, no matter the glossary, it's the experience gained from having been in that situation. And in those days, the only place to work to get that kind of experience was ESPN. So we're all byproducts of what was really great at the time about that place. And I always got a kick out of hearing people say, and this was sort of a modern day thought, that your old partner, Gibbs, Dan Patrick, was sort of a leader of surviving ESPN and having a career afterwards, where there were a lot of other guys that did that too. It's just not many people noticed ESPN in our day. We only had about 25 million subscribers. But guys like Gumby and so many others, George Grand was a great baseball announcer, right? Where did it start? It started for him as a baseball aficionado and SportsCenter host, the original, with Lee Leonard and those guys. Tommy Mees was a great broadcaster. He did studio. He would have been, I think, the preeminent hockey broadcaster, along with Doc Emmerich, had he not died suddenly in a tragedy that took place in a swimming pool just next door from where he lived, and we lost him at a very young age, a tender age. So we were all fortunate to be there when we were there.
We got a couple of minutes here. I want to ask you about this round of the college football playoff real quick. We got a couple of minutes. Give me your four favorites who you think might move on from this round.
Well, I love Boise tonight. That's my upset special.
Wow.
I think Ashton Genty is a problem. He will at least break one big run, maybe two. I think he'll get over 150 yards. He may break Barry Sanders' all-time rushing record for a single season, which is just incredible. I think he's going to have an edge about him, too, because of the Heisman voting. I think he felt that he was jobbed to some extent on that he'd never say it, but I think people around him certainly felt it, and he'll just come in, I think, with a greater edge to that extent. Maddox Madsen, who's the quarterback that people think they try to coach around him, he can make throws. So Penn State's going to stack the box, and they're going to try to keep Genty from being the guy that beats them. But I think Maddox Madsen can beat them. I do. And keep an eye on this receiver, Capers, because Camper is a really good receiver. And they'll get man coverage. Those wide receivers will get man coverage. They're going to have to make some big third down throws in that game in order to win it, but I think they can beat Penn State. Arizona State, in my mind, can cover against Texas. I don't think they can win. Oregon, in my mind, is just too good in too many areas. And when push comes to shove, I'm going to take Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard in a big game scenario. I just am. So I like Oregon to advance. And then in the other matchup, I think Georgia and Notre Dame, to me, is a pick'em game. The situation with the Georgia quarterback and what they've got to do there, I think it limits their playbook, which will aid the Notre Dame defense. And Riley Leonard proved me wrong against Indiana. That kid he can throw it for over 200. He's going to have to throw it for over 200 to beat Georgia, as good as that defense is. I would give the win to Notre Dame were it not for the game being played in an SEC site like New Orleans at the Superdome. But I'm going to take Notre Dame to edge them out with you because I just feel daring. And I'm on with dibs. I'm going to be daring. I'm going to take Notre Dame in a slight upset over Georgia, Boise in a big upset. By the way, that line is coming down a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed, but it's coming down. People are getting on the Boise Ashton Genty train.
Is Brian Kelly on a hot seat if he doesn't beat Baylor here in the next couple hours?
No, not with the recruiting he got away with. He's got an incredible portal season, fellas. He killed it. Now, they lost their quarterback to Michigan, as you know. Portnoy stepped up and came up with, I think, $3 million a year to get that kid.
Damn.
Which is, to his credit, he wants Michigan to be. And by the way, for all those like Herbie who said, I really don't care about the wins, how about this to my friend Kirk Herbstreit? How about performance, Alabama? Was that a performance by a team that deserves to be in the college football playoff?
So true. So true.
I mean,
so
come
true.
on.
Yep.
Can we just get off of come down off whatever lofty perch you're on, because Alabama had no damn business being in this playoff, and that was proven again today against a Michigan team that had to play left-handed, always has played left-handed this year because they had no quarterback and still beat them.
You are the man. Are you staying at the Chateau tonight?
I am. I'm going to bring in, I've got a little bubbly here with the bride. And, a little Prosecco Brando tonight to go along with a little late Dick Clark New Year's Rockin' Eve. And a little bowl watching tonight. I'm going to watch the Broncos have a fiesta tonight. I think wake up the echoes of that 2007 Oklahoma Boise State game, gentlemen.
Love it. There you go. There you go. All right, Brando. We'll talk to you in the new year, man. God bless you and your family, and thank you so much for everything you do for us.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for allowing me to share with you the wonderful life of Greg Gumbel.
Oh yeah, no. Gumbel's saying, man, you can talk. Yep, he's in heaven with my dad saying the same thing. That guy can talk. See you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye-bye.
All right, man.